no matter what I conduct, nobody can write my music for me. And I thought, yeah,
That's a great line.
Mhm.
yeah. So of course I stole it from Lenny. I mean, well, we all steal from Lenny, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Here
Right.
we go. So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to U-Sophia, where minds meet online. And tonight we have with us a mind that is sprouting and flowering with music and wonderment. What I find extraordinary in your personality, Jed, and I'm talking about Jed Distler to everybody. What I found extraordinary from the first time we met is the look in your eyes. It seems as if you are looking at everything as a wandering observer, as if everything is new to you. Although you probably saw it zillions of times, but every time seems as if you find something new in it. And then when we finally got to the castle on the top of the hill in uh, up west side of New York, in this incredible apartment that you now share with two cats and a lot of
Yeah.
memories and discs. Uh, you were restless physically, but not restless in the physical sense. You were restless trying to see things in a different way all the time. Am I wrong? Is this something that I invent about you, or do you find yourself in it?
Well, maybe if you see this, there's probably some truth in it because I think that I think the physical part may have something to do with it because I feel that maybe in some ways as one gets older, one's body is changing along with the mind. And I try very hard to take as much care with my body as I do with my mind because it's just something that's always been very important to me. And basically, the like a friend of mine said the warranty expires after age 50, and I'm 55, going to be 56 in December. I still feel like I'm 23, but I think that it's just these are the kinds of things that I think that they're both integrated. I'm not a great athlete by any stretch of the imagination, but I do slow bear and weight training. I work with a trainer, and I like to go to my gym. I do have a bicycle here, and um, so
When you
it,
no, go ahead, go ahead.
no, that's it. I mean, I just think that maybe I think also in playing the piano too, which is how I make a lot of my living. There's just to be in good shape and I think physical stamina has a lot to do with it. And one thing I realized is that as I stepped up the weight training, and my arms got stronger and it was building up like muscle ball. The weird thing was that I was able to control the piano better. I was able to get a bigger sound, but also able to control softer playing better, which was kind of interesting. Like the sonority really changed a lot.
Uh-huh. When you when you do training, physical training, what happens to your mind? Do you converse with your body? Does your mind go on Freilauf, as they say? Do you go on neutral with your mind? Do you allow your body to take over? What happens? Is there a philosophical exchange, a physical exchange? I think we have a.
I'm not sure, but
Okay.
I think there is something well, certainly I find that, in creating, with composing music as well as playing music, there is sort of a autoerotic element about it. Like, I have a friend, Frederick Jevsky, who's also a composer pianist, who's, older than I am. And he's always said that, well, I think I compose and I play because it feels good. There is an element to that. And I think there is an element that there is something that if it does feel good if it makes a kind of physical sense, a sense of tension and release, sense of breathing, the sense of, the flow of the breath,
Uh-huh.
relating to music, to phrases, to silences, to dynamics. I think there is definitely a connection. I think that, or vibrations, I had an interesting experience last week. There's a fantastic Norwegian pianist you might know of, Leif Ove Ansnes. He was in New York and he was playing Beethoven, and I interviewed him for Gramophone magazine. I did an interview about him playing and conducting Beethoven from the piano. And we were talking about, in late Beethoven piano music, Beethoven uses trills a lot, and he has the hands playing in the extremes of the keyboard, like one hand way up in the treble, the left hand way down the bass. And there are a lot of trills. And I was saying that, I wonder if this had to do with his hearing loss, maybe a sense of the piano vibrating and having to maybe feel the instrument vibrating. And there may have been a kernel of truth to that, but I think there is that sense of vibration and of, and especially because I do work in acoustic music, with acoustic instruments, there is that sense of the, maybe also because when I was younger, I worked with a lot of singers, so that probably informs, that sense of it. But definitely, I also had a composition teacher when I was younger named Andrew Thomas, and he always used to tell me that whenever I wrote something with a piece of music, to walk around the room and sing it, and just see how it felt in your body. And then if something didn't really feel good, probably the proportions weren't really right.
Do you
And
write
if you're,
story? Go ahead. Sorry.
excuse me?
No, no. Finish.
And
Sorry.
so, and if one is composing with a computer, and if you're cutting and pasting, and you're not physically involved with something, there's probably a chance that, there's something in the orchestration and the proportions that are not really, quite right,
Uh-huh.
I guess. But
When
I do really feel that there is the intellectual connection with the corporeal connection. I think in the same way that, if you think of Indian classical music, the sense of resonance is very much built into the structure of, when you're listening to a alap unfolding. So, which is why superficially it may seem like it's just staying on one note or in one tonality, yet within that, when the listeners are resonating along with the instruments and the performers, there are these subtle vibrations going on. I think also another factor that this is like the very long answer to a small question. I guess you're going to have to edit a lot of this out, but there is something about, in 2005, I started practicing Vipassana meditation.
Okay.
And I don't do it as regularly as I should, but what was interesting about it was the sense of vibration of your noticing the sensations in your body and observing your breathing. And if you're absolutely still and you're trying to be absolutely equanimous, where trying not to think, but just trying to be in the present, not trying to think about the past or project into the future, and by observing the breathing and the sensations of what was going on in the breath as it was happening, and not trying to impose anything on it, you're much more in touch with what's going on in your body. You're not reacting to it with aversion or with attachment, and so,
Well, this kind of
how the hell that connects with composition?
oh, everything connects to everything. I guess it's. I don't know why I called our conversation putting it all together, but this is what's happening. I mean, we are.
Well, I think, but in a way, I think that they do all come together. I think that you know, there's, when we talk about proportion and vibration and, I think that, for me, I think that composing in a way the best composing does reflect real life, which is both, rational and irrational. The sense of long breathing or sense of, sudden interruptions, or, you're walking very leisurely and just experiencing the air around you, and then all of a sudden a truck crashes in front of you. These sudden things that make no sense, But it's, and then how do we deal with that? How do you make sense of these irrational things, or how do we deal with that? That's what's,
So
I think is kind of interesting.
is music an implement to deal with things that you cannot deal with in a different way for you, or is music a narrative to an
I think
untold story?
I think it's a narrative in the sense that when I don't have the words, sometimes music won't really substitute, but sometimes, music goes through my head 24 hours a day. There's always a piece of music that's either my own or somebody else's, or these little bits of soundtracks that will come in very fleeting moments. And sometimes, unless I'm meditating, where you're not supposed to have it in your head. And I think it was, the musicologist Derek Cook, who wrote about the ring cycle. He was a brilliant Wagnerian, the guy who completed the Mahler 10th Symphony. He was the one that said music is a language that doesn't have a dictionary. I've always loved that line. And so I think that it has a narrative in a sense of connecting things, or maybe helping with transitions, but it's not something that to escape into. I don't feel like it should be an escape from real life, but I feel like it's a extension. Like art is not a imitation of reality. I think it's an extension, perhaps.
Art is also not, as far as I'm concerned, a definite and well-defined milestone. I mean, I cannot relate to, especially music, or any type of art for that matter, as something that I know is going to recall a feeling that I had the last time I met with that piece of art, with that piece of music. It brings to mind right now, the Adagio of Schuby's string quintet,
Mm-hmm.
which always brings me to tears, and always brings me, but they're different tears, and it's always different. So, or if I meet a work by Matisse or by Braque, and I've seen those works before, and I've seen them many times, and if I have to describe my physical state during the confrontation, the physical state is probably quite similar. Maybe the heartbeat is quite similar, but the narrative that is created within me is always different. It always happens in a different way.
Yeah, well, I think our responses change because the art stays the same, but we change, of course. But however, I think that like if I hear a certain piece of music, or let's say like the Grateful Dead's live recording of Dark Star on the Live Dead album from 1969, when I first heard that, just hearing this kind of free-form rock and roll that was like, it was like jazz, rock and roll, jazz disguised as rock and roll, or rock and roll as jazz. It was just something I thought was so creative and ungeneric. And I remember, and I have associations of listening to this in my bedroom when I was like 12 years old. And I can still listen to this music with unalloyed pleasure. And I get little fleeting images of my childhood bedroom when I play this, but now I hear it in different ways. I hear more details, and in fact, I love it more and more.
Yeah.
And now, of course, there are other Grateful Dead versions of the same tune that maybe I like even better. But there was that that first impression, or I still have this when I hear the Tannhäuser Overture or Wagner.
Uh-huh.
I remember having 78s when I was a kid of the Wilhelm Mengelberg Concertgebouw performance. And there was something about the brass, that were slightly tuned sharp or something that when I hear the music, there's something that's fleeting about the 78. I get this fleeting image, even though now when I hear it or if I play it on the piano, it's very different, because I'm looking at it from the perspective of a professional musician, or, I'm seeing the notes and I'm hearing it, as, from how it's constructed, et cetera. But there is always that, that first time association, which is always great.
I'm going to ask you to remember what you just said, because you brought up now a thing that I would like to talk about. The connection between the figure of notes and their significance. We're so used to see the figure of the letters, and we relate them to sounds and to part of words, with the little round things with a leg and little wings attached to them, that people, most of the people, well, in the good old days, most everybody knew how to read notes. Today,
of course. Oh.
And so I'd like us to keep that and go into that, but first of all, let's break for the first intermezzo, and we're going to do it in the mystery tour kind of way. We'll play the tune, and after that you'll tell us what we heard, because we don't know what it's going to be.
Okay, sounds good.
Here we go. I'm going to ask everybody to mute their mics so that we don't have an echo while we listen to the music.
So do I press mute me?
Yeah, I can mute you. It's okay.
I guess I press the mute me button.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Let's unmute everybody. Can you unmute your mic, Jed? Click unmute, because I'm trying to unmute you for whatever reason. It doesn't work. Oh, here we are. Yeah. We have Fernando Marin with us. You just muted your mic again. Let me just do it, just a second. Here we are.
Unmute?
No, we're okay now. We have Fernando Marin with us. I guess Fernando is working out his equipment, because let me chat with him a second.
Give me a second. I'll be right back, all right?
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure. Okay, we are in a conversation with pianist and musicologist Jed Distler, with whom we are trying to guide a musical tour into the body and the mind of a creative person. Fernando, I have no idea whether you can hear me or not. I don't think so because I don't see that you have a microphone. If you can look down at the chat and let me know if there's a problem with your equipment. Okay, well, I don't know. Maybe you can try to chat with Fernando, Nira, because
Yeah, I can try that.
okay, I tried in a private chat, but he probably is
Okay.
not aware that there is such a thing as a chat.
Okay, everything's coming in loud and clear. Okay,
Okay,
okay, I'm here, and I just plugged my laptop in. Sorry.
okay,
Okay.
here we are. Okay, we have Fernando with us, but I think Fernando has a problem with his equipment because I can't hear him. It doesn't seem as if he can hear us. But Nero is trying to work it out with him. What did we listen to, Jed?
I don't even know what you're playing. I can't hear it.
No, we played it before. You couldn't hear it?
Oh, the thing you played before
Yes.
when we were talking before. Oh, that's actually a movement from a piece I wrote for two pianos called Loose Changes. And the pianists were Alice Ryback and Susan Grace. They have a duo called Quattramani.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a release on the Bridge label. It's part of a CD that's called Kindred Spirits. And they're really, this was commissioned by them in
Mm-hmm.
2005. And they've recorded it and they've played it a few times. The piece has been done a few times since.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go back to what we started talking about. You know, the figure of a note and the significance of a note. Because you said that growing up and becoming a professional musician, where you listen to music, you not
Yeah.
only listen to the music, you see the notes, which is something that is, you know, an experience that is limited today to people who actually can read notes. Uh, what does it mean to you? Can you detach yourself from the fact that you can read notes? Can you listen to music without seeing the notes?
Oh, sure. It depends. It depends on the piece. Sometimes if I'm listening to a piece of music that I know very well or a piece I've played, I can sometimes visualize it. But if you're going to play me orchestra recording of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, do I visualize the orchestra score in front of me? No, I
How about
can't do that.
Berlioz?
Depends. Berlioz is what an amazing orchestrator he was.
Wasn't it?
He was quite a, he's one of my great heroes.
Mine too.
You can take little bits and pieces of Berlioz, like from Queen Mab Scherzo. If you could take, there's this place where there's a repeating figure. If you did that like a little tape loop and played it for somebody and didn't say who it was, they'd say, "Oh, this is John Adams. Is this from Nixon in China?" you know, because of the way he uses winds and brass in such unorthodox combinations. It's really extraordinary. And I still think he's very undervalued in a lot of ways.
In a way, I think he's regarded as a very intellectual composer, which, you know, to a certain extent he was probably, like many, but he's so emotional. If you let yourself go, he grabs you and takes you to places. I mean,
Yes, I think you think of Les Troyens, I think the really very lyrical arias are just just the purity of the melodic line. Actually, the Romeo alone, Romeo and Juliet, the the love music is just it's just this endless melody. It's really and it's. I think the intellectual thing that we're thinking about it, has to do, maybe it has to do with the literary subtext, which is of course very popular, and he, because he always had the
Shakespeare in
story.
mind, yes.
Exactly, and then maybe Symphony Fantastique, the Idée Fixe, where he has the how he brings that back in each movement. That's perhaps like a superimposed compositional thing that's more intellectual than intuitive, but then there he, this is a whole other show. It's interesting. In 2003, for the Berlioz 200th birthday, I had this commission to write a piece for this little. It was a concert at Joe's Pub in New York.
Oh, okay.
And what I did is I do a lot of things where I take where I'm very fond of speaking from the piano, where I'll be playing piano and speaking at the same time. There's this whole genre that's been mushrooming in the last 20 years, and I've done quite a bit of it. It's something that is very organic for me. And anyway, I did this piece where I took a letter of Berlioz about how he hates the piano and how he hates writing for the piano and all the horrible things that have come from the instrument. And of course, I'm playing the piano and I'm speaking the text. And it's called The Seduction of Commonplaces, I think.
Beautiful.
I had a lot of fun writing it and playing it.
That sounds beautiful. Well, we should be doing some of...
Berlioz, because Berlioz did not play piano, and I think he was one of the first major composers not to be a pianist.
Not only was he not a pianist, stories go that he refused to taste his music by playing the piano. He said that it would flatten out the music and kill it. And it brings...
That's what this letter was about, because I think that he didn't want to... I think what it was, and this is what we're talking about with composing, is that not wanting to do what his hands were doing, he wanted to do what his mind was doing rather than what his hands were doing. And it can be, I think it's a difference between composing and improvising. Although, we're talking a lot before about the autoerotic thing, how something should feel good in your body. But I think I'm talking about the sense of proportion and flow. But sometimes, in the act of improvising, you can be just physically getting in, like people who play air guitar, you can just work up this kind of energy, which can feel really good, but it sound horrible, and that's the danger, we can get into, because I don't think that, I grew up playing jazz, and, I have to be immodest, I really have a very good gift for improvising, but to improvise well, I think you have to have a compositional impulse, probably helps to govern it. But I think they come from two different places, though.
What is the... I wouldn't say the difference, but what are the distinct locations you take off from to improvise and to compose? Can they integrate somewhere?
Oh yeah, I think they do. I mean, certainly, well, like cadenzas or something, historically speaking, it does. I think they can, but I think that I think the improvisatory impulse can certainly generate, composition. Sometimes I think one could sit down and improvise something that can be a perfectly formed composition. It happens all the time. But the act of composing is not improvising. I think the composing is, let's say I sit down at the piano or any instrument and I just play something and it's captured by a recording device and it happens to be a perfectly formed composition. Okay. However, it's the composer in me that would look at it after the fact and look at it from the distance, even if it just happened, and say, yeah, okay, there's the composition. It's looking at it after, it's in the editing, and deciding it needs editing or it does not need editing.
Uh-huh.
But I think that for me, I think the composing is the contemplative part, which is the distance, and then looking at it after it's done. Composing is the act of composing itself, is one thing, but I think it's always the looking back and the revising and the finishing, or deciding not to do that. But it is that, aesthetic judgment, I think, where in improvising you could be making instantaneous decisions that could be compositional, but because you're doing them in the moment, you can have happy accidents that are compositionally viable, or some things where you're just getting out of mistakes, which are maybe not compositionally interesting, but they're interesting just in terms of this musical spontaneity and just showing how you, like, a good example is, it even turns into, with performances, like sometimes, like if you're interpreting a piece of music and maybe the audience you feel like the audience isn't with you, and then you start revving up the tempo, it's saving the performance, but it doesn't make it, an ideal interpretation that you'd want to hear over and over again, Or, I have a recording, for instance, of Rudolf Serkin in a live concert he's playing in a Beethoven concerto, and he had a memory lapse, but he improvised his way out of it. And it's absolutely wonderful, but is it the kind of thing you want to hear over and over again? And so
I would have liked to hear it.
Right. So by the same token, with improvising, like with jazz solos, I think that there are some jazz solos that they're created in the moment, yet you can listen to them over and over again because they are, they have the shape and the structure, and they do stand up. Maybe not all of them do, but it's just they're different kinds of things. You listen to it differently. They're different animals to me.
I often wonder about the distance that modern classical music,
Yeah.
Is taking from being one with the instrument, like it used to be at the Baroque, like you touched upon the Indian classic music.
Yes, which is all about resonance and sound.
And the instruments is part of you. I mean, there's no bridge between you and the instrument. And if we take that into electronic in music and electric sound, what does it do to us? I mean, this introduction, I'm not trying to judge any, in any direction. I'm not trying to say this is good, this is bad. I'm just trying to understand. Here we have the Baroque violinist who is trembling with the violin, and whatever he does, the violin does, and
yes, because you make the sound. On the piano, you don't make the sound; it's there waiting to be played. So like the tip of an umbrella playing in middle C is the same as Arthur Rubinstein playing in middle C, but not quite. But on the other hand, you have the Baroque violinist, but then you have Jimi Hendrix.
Yes.
And one note, and it's Hendrix, and yet he needed electricity.
Yeah.
So, we can't deny the fact of Jimi Hendrix, who completely changed, the whole veneer, the whole dimension of electric guitar. Or
Well,
Jerry Garcia, we're talking about the Grateful Dead, or Charlie Christian, or
I think,
or Jaco Pastorius on the electric bass. I think there. What I'm saying is that it is very possible to play electric instruments and contribute something incredibly individual. I think it's been done a lot.
oh yeah, definitely, definitely. What I think it has been done a lot more in popular music and jazz than it has been in, well, you know,
I think there are composers. I think the thing with electronic music is that um, there is that individual imprint you're talking about. That I think also, I think with electronics, I think the cliches that one can get into, the type of cliches and the sound effects, it's very easy to
yeah,
succumb to that type of thing. And there are a lot of composers who you can't really tell who's who because the effects are so uniform. But there are, of course, exceptions. I think there's some composers who write exclusively electronic music who have achieved extraordinary individuality and, and who really use the medium both technically and creatively to create something very individual. I'll give you a good example. There's an American composer named Noah Krashevsky
hmm,
who I think he's, for me, I think he's one of the most undervalued composers of any kind of music. I think that because it isn't just electronic composition, he's a real composer, and what he does is he samples acoustic instruments and voices, and then he expands them electronically, so they're almost like hyper instruments. It's like watching cartoons. When human beings do things in cartoons that they can't do, in their real body. So this is really the equivalent of it. And he has an extraordinary body of work. I think and it's not just because he happens to work in electronics, yet it's real painstaking, thought out composing on the highest level. Morton Sabatnik,
uh-huh.
he was one of the great pioneers. I think his music is fantastic, or even it's not electronic, but Colin Nancaro, who is the composer he was the American composer who wrote almost exclusively for player piano.
Yes.
And what he was doing is he was perforating piano rolls so that the piano was doing things that human hands could not possibly do. And he always said that had he been younger, he probably would have gone into electronic music because the piano rolls where he was able to create these really complex rhythmic and harmonic and textural things that human hands couldn't do, or things that he could achieve a degree of exactitude that where this really met his needs. Now these composers do this, but still I think there's plenty of room for good old acoustic human beings.
It brings back to a quite central point of my relationship to music, and it's the very personal signature that the great composers always have. And I'm not talking about the kind of sophisticated signature like Shostakovich has, which with him turns into fantastic music. But the idea is very graphic and mathematical. Uh, but Ravel has the very specific Ravel signature. You cannot hear four notes of Mozart without knowing it's Mozart. How does it happen?
That's not true. I think you can hear a lot of Mozart and
And
you
say
don't
it
know
Haydn.
it. I think there's a lot of Mozart that's really very boring and very generic. I'm sorry to say that.
Okay.
We think it could be, but actually his later music, that's really where the personality is coming out. I think a lot of some of the divertimenti, can be by, it could be by, Dittersdorf.
Well, I mean, yeah, Mozart.
But when you get to Don Giovanni, Figaro, the Jupiter Symphony, the concertos, of course, that's a whole other world.
From the 40th onwards, I think he was
Well, not
unbeatable.
too many. 40, 41. Right? Well, no,
That's unbeatable. I mean, it's
but the Jupiter Symphony, the last movement of the Jupiter Symphony with all that contrapuntal stuff. I had a conducting teacher once and said that the last movement of the Jupiter Symphony, it was like Mozart. The analogy he made was like somebody going from high school math to college physics.
okay.
In Sorry. Anyway, I interrupted your train of thought.
No, 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 no. It's we are joined by Sylvia. Let me.
Dan Fernando can hear us now, so he
Okay.
doesn't have a webcam, but
Okay. Well,
yeah.
so Fernando, if you want to participate, obviously just raise hand and we'll let you participate. What about Sylvia? Let's see. Sylvia does not have. Well, we'll wait a second. It'll probably be some moments before the equipment is workable. But welcome, Sylvia, and it's good to have you. Now, welcome, Fernando. I welcomed you while you couldn't hear us, so here we are. Um,
But I mean, is it good that you can always tell
I don't
the
know.
composer?
I don't know.
Sometimes I don't think that has to do with it's you have individual fingerprints, but I don't think that has to do necessarily with the quality of the
No, 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 no. I'm not. I really am not doing a quality judgment here at all. I'm just saying that. Well, Satie. There's no way to be wrong about a Satie. Uh,
Yeah, I guess so. I guess, although depends on the piece. I think that it has to do with familiarity, maybe. There's certain fingerprints, but I think there's certain pieces of Satie that are really well known. And I think that if you get used to those gestures, certain accompanimental figures, then you can sort of use that as a fingerprint. But maybe some of his lesser known pieces you wouldn't tell immediately because there could be some gestures in a Satie piece that are similar to Charlier or
mhm.
early Debussy. I don't know.
Oh, well.
I mean, that's a whole interesting topic.
We'll go into that after the next piece that we're going to listen to. I see
Okay.
that Daniel joined us, so Daniel joins us from Barcelona. Fernando, where do you join us from?
Barcelona.
Ah, you're also from Barcelona. So hi Fernando from Barcelona and hi Daniel from Barcelona, and hopefully Sylvia will join us not only in name but also through a mic. And I'm going to mute everybody now, and we're going to listen to the second intermezzi. And after this, I would ask you, Jed, to tell us what we just have heard. So here we
I
are.
hope I'll be able to hear it.
Let me see. I'm trying to understand why you wouldn't. You should be able to hear it. Let me start and just give me. Just write in the chat, please, if you cannot hear me. If you cannot hear the music, it should start instantly. Okay? So here we are. This is going to be the second intermezzi, and after that, we will ask. I know what happened. I know what happened. We have, for whatever reason,
For some reason, I'm not hearing anything.
yes, no, 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 it didn't start yet. It didn't start
Okay.
yet. Okay, it's for whatever reason we are back to the good old times when uh, we are dependent on the slowest connection. I don't know why. So it'll be just a couple of seconds until we're ready for everybody to hear. This is what happened before. For whatever reason, I don't know why.
I'm hearing you clearly.
No, you're hearing me clear, but playing through the system in the beginning of our career as a salon online, we had a problem because the music or the video were downloading at the slowest connection speed. Now we do not have that problem, but for whatever reason, it seems like we have it now. Okay, we should be okay. So I'm going to mute everybody, and if you don't hear it in 5 seconds, Jed, please let me know.
Already?
Okay. So
Yeah, I heard it loud and clear.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a movement from again. That was a movement from my two-piano piece, Loose Changes, which is actually a set of 10 very short piano pieces for two pianos, and it was a commission where I had a commission from this fantastic two-piano team called Quattro Mani, Susan Grace and Alice Ryback. They're based in Colorado, and I didn't know what to write for them because I had so many ideas for pieces. I couldn't make up my mind. So I said, the hell with it. I'm going to use all the ideas. So rather than a long movement, I just wrote 10 very short pieces, and they're all connected.
The pieces that we heard in the first intermezzo and in the second seem to be part of a conversation. The first one was very
Liquid, fluid.
yeah, but it was it's kind of two people communicating without words, just looking at something that is similar and seeing it through two different eyes, but still communicating very closely.
Dan, you know, you totally got that with that, because that first piece, what happens is they're both playing the same music, but they start at different times and they can play it at whatever tempo they want.
Well,
And
it does
that's
come
on-
across.
So in other words, they're both having a conversation without listening to each other. But then the piece that we just heard, of course, you know, they have individual parts and they have to be extremely precise, and it's quite a little difficult thing. And it's funny, we were talking about Shostakovich before. It has kind of a Shostakovich-y kind of
Uh-huh.
that type of, march kind of, well, I love Shostakovich.
Here we go. Okay. There was a time when I have kind of curious relationships with different creators, not only musicians, with writers and
Oh, sure.
I have a ongoing love story with some, a kind of love-hate relationship where we get together, we fight, we leave, and but two continuous love affairs of mine are Sol Bello as a writer and Shostakovich as a composer. Uh,
Oh.
Saul Bellows seems to write all my thoughts. I don't know how he does it. Be- and
Mm.
and Shostakovich, uh, I from the first time I heard it, I think the first thing I heard of Shostakovich was the piano quintet. I
Oh
was
yeah.
very young, and I think I heard him play with the Beethoven.
The Beethoven. Yeah, they did a famous recording of
Right,
it. That's right.
right. This was in the 15th century, something like that. I was accompanying Columbus over the ocean, and we were listening to Shostakovich playing with the Beethoven. Oh, maybe I got it mixed up. I can't remember. But anyhow,
Yeah.
but with
Well,
Shostakovich,
yeah, actually, they're both very kind of related because Saul Bellow is very concise, and his prose is he expresses complex thoughts in very simple language. In a way, he's almost like an extension of Hemingway, but I think with much more of a sense of humor.
I think you touched upon the point. I mean, I love Hemingway when he says, "I'll never be a writer until I can describe the smell of a rose." Fantastic. But then, as you say, he's got no sense of humor. And if you
I didn't say that. I said that. Yeah, I said that Bellow. Maybe I did say that, but I think Bellow definitely has that. There is the sense of humor. I mean, I haven't read as much of him, but what I love about Shostakovich is the transparency of his orchestration and how he writes. Like when you listen to the string quartets, you could really listen to a few pages, and you could take dictation from it because they're because of the transparency, and he doesn't give you more notes than he has to. This isn't true maybe about his very early things, where he's just showing off all over the place, like the second, third symphonies or the
but I loved the first symphony.
oh well the first symphony is wonderful because
It's
it's
naive, kind
very
of
ironic.
almost. What did he say? Sorry.
Well, yeah, well, no, it's a very ironic kind of piece because
Yeah.
it starts with the trumpet solo, I think, and he's doing all these things, saying, "Oh yeah, it's a first symphony. Yeah, well, I'm going to show that he's being very clever." And then as the symphony develops, there's the Wagner quote, and it's a sort of love-hate Wagner
Yeah.
thing, you know. I really I like him. I like him a lot. He's just a really fantastic composer. Also, I think that the way that Shostakovich's stature has really blossomed and increased since his death. I think.
Mm.
I think his stature is, much. It's always been high, but I think he's really, when you think of how many performances he gets, how many recordings of the symphonies, the string quartets, et cetera, et cetera.
What do you think about cross-genre musicians? And I'm thinking now about Keith Jarrett and the way that he performed the 24 um, fugues that Shostakovich wrote.
I think his performance of the Shostakovich Preludes and Fugues are terrific.
I think
I
it's
think they're
fantastic.
wonderful.
I think it's one of the best, if not the best I heard.
I agree with you. I think there's several really good versions. If I start saying favorite versions, then people are going to say, "What's the matter? You didn't like that one?" It's that story about the Jewish mother, who gives her son two shirts for a present. He comes downstairs wearing one of them. She says, "The other one you didn't like?" So with the Shostakovich Preludes and Fugues, yeah, Keith Jarrett's are very good, but the Vladimir Ashkenazi is
He
excellent.
was my favorite until I heard Keith, because Vladimir Ashkenaz.
I have not compared them back to back, but also Konstantin Sherbakov, I
Yeah,
think, is really, really first rate. And also Jenny Lin, who's a fantastic young pianist for the Hensler Classics label. she's made some really strong recordings. Her Shostakovich Preludes and Fugues, I think, are really terrific. But I agree with you. I think Keith Jarrett is somebody who, he's a very fine classical musician. I think I think he's one of the great jazz pianists, and he's evolved and evolved over the years. I think. I always loved his playing. I loved him when he was with the Charles Lloyd Group, and of course when he was playing electric piano with Miles Davis. And then some of the solo concerts, I think, are especially some of the recent ones where he's not doing these extended long pieces, but he's doing short pieces. And sometimes he does something where he'll start a piece and it sounds like you've caught him midway through something. So it's not like a beginning, middle, end, but it's like a middle and then another middle. And also, you know what I love about Keith is that some of the things he does with his standards trio, he does these extended introductions. There's the Keith Jarrett Live at the Blue Note. There's a version of Autumn Leaves where for about 5 minutes he's playing a solo piano introduction, and he's just using the phrase, in Autumn Leaves, da 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 da, and he's just using that bom 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 ba da 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 da, and he's just developing that, and he's going all over the damn place. I mean, it's like Wagner. It's just, and with all these contrapuntal voices, it's like. And the guy improvised. I mean, it's amazing. And also, another thing I love is there's a recording called Still Life from 1986, and there's an introduction he does to My Funny Valentine, which just unfolds in the most beautiful way. And it starts very simply with C minor, but then harmonically it starts evolving and evolving, and then when the trio comes in with the tune, it's fantastic. I wish I could do that.
About things that you wish you could do and things that you can do, while you write a piece, I'm talking about pieces that you had commissioned to write, or what do you do more? Do you do more commissioned pieces, or do you write more because...
For my soul.
For your soul.
It's a good question. In the last couple, in the last couple of years, I was telling you before, I had been married for 31 years, and my wife, Celia Cook, passed away in March 2011. She had breast cancer for a long time, and the last 3 years of her life, I really was spending taking care of her. I mean, she had periods of remission, but the focus really of my life was just, nursing her and making sure, everything was okay. And I still had composing. I had some composing projects it was mainly commissions, and I just did not. I've always written for myself, but I just didn't really at the time. But I had these commissions I had to satisfy. And I did the commissions, and I did my best, and I was very professional about them. But for some reason, I kind of went about it really as just assignments to do, and I did my best with them. But the interesting thing is, and then in that period of her final illness, and then in the aftermath of her death, I was doing things where I was trying to get back to my jazz roots, as maybe it was just a way of kind of regressing, or just to kind of refresh myself or recharge myself, and just looking for some things to do. And I did a project which I'm still involved with, where I played Thelonious Monk's complete songs in one night. And it's not strictly composing, but it kind of was a way of using a lot of compositional devices to generate, my ideas for arrangements and for transitions and whatnot. And I also did a kind of a new age disc called Meditate with the Masters, where I took classical music's greatest hits and I turned them into these relaxing piano solos. And these were things that are not representative of my composing style, yet it was a creative thing. It was very different. And very recently, I was with my partner now is a artist, Maria Scarpini. She's a painter and she works in art conservation. And we were talking and she says, you always talk about yourself as a composer, yet so much of it seems like in the past. Yet, why aren't you composing? And I said, well, I've been doing this and that. She said, no, you really, you talk about yourself as a composer and composing is so important to you, yet, and, why don't you what projects do you want to do? Just do something for your heart. Do something that's going to satisfy yourself. And then I thought, well, I have a concert that's coming up in December where it's with a few other pianists who play a lot of contemporary music. In fact, one of them is also a composer. And I thought, well, I have this 20 minutes, and rather than play something old, why don't I create something brand new? So what I did was I looked in my sketches, and I found this kind of large piece that's very stark and rather severe in style. It's something I started in 2001. And I took it out again, and I started reworking it. And now, for the last couple of weeks, every day I've been working 2 and 3 hours and working with this material. And it's like I never left. And I don't have a commission for it yet. I'm going back and working on this piece and looking at it, and it's just really wonderful.
Let's start including.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's well, having the background that I have, I hate questions that have answers. So I don't know if any questions of mine.
But I think this is what I was doing was what my point is that I was showing that coming back into the point is that to function as a composer every day is important, like brushing your teeth. And it kind of got away from me when I was putting my personal life back together and recharging my batteries and getting ready for this great adult do-over and this kind of wonderful new life that I have, and with a new partner and who's just giving me new ways of look. She's really just giving me new ways of looking at things and of new possibilities and things that may seem superficial, like I'm wearing perfume for the first time and I'm taking making a conscious effort about my wardrobe. I used to never do this, but I never used a goddamn hairdryer. Yeah, it sounds superficial, but it really isn't, because these are things that I find that it's making me feel better about myself. And like I was saying, I'm driving for the first time because I decided to get my license and that in my mid-50s to be driving for the first time, to have cats, this is something people take for granted, yet having pets, I have these 2 kittens, it's a completely different thing, it's like maybe I'm a human, I feel so alive again. And it's like it's like I recognize aspects of my old personality, the musician, the reviewer, the presenter, the composer, but it's almost like I'm in a parallel universe, and it's like, I dare say I love this. I think I like it a little better than people. Not better, it's just very different.
Yeah. Let's include the people that we have and hear a little bit who is who. So let's start with Daniel. Daniel, we happen to know. He lives in Barcelona. Tell us a little bit about you, Daniel.
I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you perfectly, yes.
Fine. Well, I am glad to participate and listen to such an interesting subject. And I listened before for some pieces of played by Jed, and they are very interesting. Maybe later I will comment something that is interesting me very much about his way of approaching this kind of pieces that I listen to.
Daniel is a visual artist. I don't want to.
Oh,
I don't want to
great.
limit it to painting because that's how we met through his paintings. But then I found out that he's first of all an artist and uses different medias to express his artistic vision. We
I'd love to see your work.
Yes, of course, we will have. I'm sure we will have chance.
I
Yes.
hope so. Yeah, I want to. If you have anything online or if there's a way I
Yes.
could see it, I'd be very curious.
Yes, of course I have, but then later I think that because now Dan wants to present everybody, later I will ask you something that is very interesting for me to somehow to understand the way you perform, because I listen to things that evoke other things, and I would like to know if this kind of spaces between uh, what I can feel is something that is more subjective, or something that maybe has to do with your uh, way of thinking.
Well, I don't know if I have one way of thinking. I think I'm kind of scattered all over the place.
Yeah, maybe I was when I listen to you playing, love I love your playing, but I could hear from the pieces that you made. You call them after Brahms, after Beethoven, kind of
Oh, right,
these are the
from the
meditations,
meditation
yes.
masterpiece.
yeah, the meditations, and
Yeah, well, that's a very, that was a very specific project where, I decided to do these. Actually, that was an interesting project where I had a friend who has a record company called Musical Concepts, and he primarily does reissues, Todd Landor. And back in 2006, he asked me, well, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I kind of have this idea of taking famous classical music themes and making these very relaxing piano solos out of them, because I started doing it just as for fun, but then I started going over them and refining them and really working on these over and over again. And I remember, I don't want to sound like a name drop thing, but back in 2006, I actually did this panel discussion with Philip Glass and John Corleano
Wow.
and about concert music and film music and the differences between them. And Philip had asked me what I was working on, and I had just started, putting the Meditate with the Masters arrangements on paper. I said, I'm working on this thing, and I showed him my version of the Ode to Joy from Beethoven Ninth. And his first reaction was, instead of saying, that's nice, I like it, or interesting, he said, I bet you learned something about your compositional process. And he really hit the nail on the head, because he could tell perhaps that it wasn't just me like playing Ode to Joy in the style of George Winston, fluffing something off like that, it but that when I wrote it out, I took a lot of care with how many times do I repeat this phrase? Is there space in between the melody phrases, and in what register do I repeat this? So these are all compositional choices that were governing what was going on. So even though it wasn't like a creative composition in the sense of, like loose changes or other things that I have, but yet a compositional aesthetic was certainly governing, how that was put together.
it's very interesting. If I can add something, Dan, is it possible
Of course.
to ask?
Yeah.
You know why I asked you? Because I am a performer with plastic. I started with plastic work and color, then
Mm-hmm.
with video and space. And I, when I work, I used to listen to many different things according to the moment that I am feeling things. Some music that is maybe classic or jazz or even Brazilian or South American.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said myself, like in this phrase that there was used in a campaign for Bill Clinton, they said it's the economy stupid. I say myself, it's the tempo stupid. I mean, it's
Yes.
something that I listen to your work and um, I remember something like, for example, Dizzy Gillespie playing in a jazz concert in Antibes in the year '64, I think, and Lalo Schifrin is playing the piano in a very
Yeah.
beautiful part of the from the maybe the sixth minute, and it reminded me your playing. It reminded me because there are sounds of the sea because they are playing by the sea, and the waves and the people speaking outdoors and the voices of kids, and but your playing is so intimate inside the room when you play, but other noises and other sounds come in between, like if you give the tempo on the edge. And I loved it because it reminded me many other noises, many other sounds that are not the only sounds that you live in the. That's what I wanted to just to tell you that it
Oh,
evoked
thank you.
me.
Well, I guess I'll consider that a compliment.
I think it.
Yeah. So
I think it
as I
was
said,
meant as one, and I think actually a very beautiful way of putting it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm grateful. I'm touched. Thank you.
great.
Thank you, Daniel.
We have
Thank you.
Nira Meet, who is in Tel Aviv. Nira, just briefly tell us a little bit about who you are, and I'm not going to say and why, but
So I'm live in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And I'm also a painter, and on the way to being an artist, not on my start,
okay,
on the beginning.
okay. Modesty. Will somebody please stand up and tell Modesty to leave the room? Thank you.
Mhm.
Hi, Sylvia. It's good to have you here with
Hi,
us.
Lan.
It's the first time that you are here in U-Sophia, so it's a big pleasure. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you, Lan, for giving me this opportunity to be here with you. And just, I would like to listen this conversation. It seems so interesting for me. I'm a graphic designer and Daniel's friend, and I would like to join this time with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. Happy you're here.
You're welcome. And thank you to Jed to try to understand him and his musicians. I don't know him very well, but I would like to learn more about this composer.
Uh,
So thanks.
I think the great thing about being with Jad is that Jad is learning to be with Jad, and is finding every every time I meet Jad, he seems to be finding a new Jad. And the new Jad is very interesting, and he's kind of looking back and says, "Who are all those Jads around me?" And well, it's got something about them, but this is very, very beautiful. Fernando, may we have a little bit of a mini profile of who you are? And first of all, again, welcome to U-Sophia, and just tell us briefly where you. I understand you're also in Barcelona. Fernando? I guess we have a little audio problem. We have Gilit. Hi, Gilead. Can you hear us? Gilead? Okay. Also a problem here. So, okay. Well, so we are contoured with friends, and it's good to be here. My dream is to have a meeting of not great minds, because I don't know what it means, of curious minds. Curiosity makes life so interesting and so enriching, and the great minds kind of make me, well, they tower over me, obviously, so it kind of makes me want to leave the room, and because there's not enough for a tiny mind like myself next to a great mind. So curious minds is what I would like U-Sophia to be a meeting place for. Jed, let me ask you something. Is there a difference when you play music, either yours or somebody else, and when you write music, as far as your intentions? I'll try to explain what I'm trying to say. This way, maybe even I will understand it. When you play, do you repeat things that you thought about while you were working on the piece? And when you compose, do you listen already to the finished piece while you're composing?
Well, when I'm composing, it really depends. I think that composing, like I said, is a not necessarily a linear in real time thing where I start at the beginning and finish at the end. Sometimes I can be writing a piece. Sometimes I'll write a piece of music. I know how it's going to end. I could write the ending first, or I don't do things in order. I think. But playing a piece of music, let's say if I play a composition of mine, I'm really not. I'm really playing it as if I was playing somebody else's music. I'm just interpreting the notes on the page. And a lot of times I think, why the hell did the composer write this? This is too hard. Why did Jed Distler write this horrible thing here? This is so boring. I wish I could change it. So they're two different things. So if I'm playing my music, it's really like playing anybody else's. And the only difference is that I tend to practice other people's music more carefully than I practice my own music, because I feel that if I wrote it, I should be able to play it better than I am. But whereas with somebody else's music, if I'm playing something by another living composer, I better really practice it, because I don't want to mess it up. And if I have to coach with the composer, I want to be sure that they know that I've really worked on it.
Well, I heard you play all of Beethoven in 1 minute.
Oh yeah, that's a written piece. That's actually I think I sent that to you. I'm not sure, but that's actually a piece where I took a couple of measures from each Beethoven sonata and I just swung them together so it lasts 1 minute. But the part of the composing is you have to know which measures to take. And it's actually not an easy piece to play, because each of those 32 snippets you have to give a specific character to. So it's like, changing clothes 32 times in 1 minute. And I wrote that was a commission for a pianist named Guy Livingston. He's an American pianist who lives in Paris. And he has this really marvelous ongoing project called Don't Panic. And what it is that he's asked many, many composers to write pieces of music that last 1 minute each.
Wow.
And who is it, please?
Guy Livingston. And so I wrote for him the 32 Beethoven sonatas in 1 minute. I also did the ring cycle in 75 seconds. I couldn't get into 60 seconds, and that's for toy piano. And I wrote it for Guy, although he hasn't played it yet, I don't think. But there's a pianist, Margaret Lang-Tan, who has specialized in toy piano music, and Margaret has been a really wonderful champion of my music, and along with it, she's one of the big John Cage interpreters, and she plays my 75-second ring all over the place. I think you can find it on YouTube. It's really fantastic what she does with it.
I'm going.
And I think that I actually this is actually part of a larger series of pieces where I have the complete Scarlatti sonatas in 1 minute, which is actually divided for toy piano and real piano simultaneously. I have the complete Nikolai Metner sonatas in 1 minute, I think. The whole series. But, this is just, that's not what I primarily do as a composer. But they are a lot of fun, though. But the Beethoven piece, I do have a lot of fun playing.
Yeah, it seemed, first time that we met at the
Cornelia Street Cafe.
Yeah, Enchanted Castle on Cornelia Street. You were playing hide and seek and catch as catch can with Matt on the piano.
Oh, that was with Matt O'Coin.
Yeah,
That's right.
Both of you had such fun.
Well, we were trying to improvise in the style of Wagner, and it was, it was a catastrophe because Wagner is difficult to improvise. It's easier. There's some composers that are easy to improvise in their style. Like you can do fake Mozart easily because you can put in many different ideas, which would have been very viable. Whereas Bach is too complicated. Beethoven is difficult because there's such inevitability about what he wants that you'll probably choose something that's not good. You can do fake Richard Strauss. That's really good because he just kind of compose like cows give milk. He just churns it on. Wagner's a little tricky. I don't know why, but at the Cornelia Street, there's this very, very talented young composer, pianist, conductor, Matt O'Coin, who just moved to New York. He's 21 or 22,
Really?
I think. And
he looks 15, but I thought
very, very good young composer. And we actually met a few years ago on Cornelia Street. There was a summer festival of Make Music New York. And I arranged to do this piece with 4 pianos by a Dutch composer, Simeon ten Holt, called Canto Ostinato. So we had the performance of this, and then we sort of had like an open mic for pianos where anybody who wanted to play the piano could play, and we had duos and some improvisers. I brought down a lot of 4-hand and 2-piano music if anybody wanted to sight read. So this was Matt O'Coin's first day in New York, and he just kind of wandered by, and he sat down and played, and we both played some written music together, and then we both improvised because I found out he was a good jazz pianist. And then a few months later, we actually played Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in a 4-hand arrangement at Cornelia Street.
Wow.
It was a crazy event because we rehearsed it once. So we were like going by the seat of our pants, and it was totally insane.
But you had this physical thing also, running around each other, you were changing.
Yeah, that was when I played on the top and I ran to the bottom. Yeah, right. Yeah, it was very silly, but I think that's the thing with improvisation, where you think on your feet, and also if it doesn't work, how to just own up to it not working. It's like a comedian who's bombing. I don't know if you remember Johnny Carson.
Of course.
The talk show host. And I was a huge Johnny Carson fan. And what I really loved is when he was doing his monologue and the jokes didn't work and he was bombing.
Like 60% of the time.
Yeah. And how he got out of that was great, because that was even more interesting than the jokes, just seeing that when he got zero reaction. just how he handled it, and he was able to step outside himself. You know,
That's
I think the trick also is, taking the work seriously, but not to take yourself seriously, which I wish more people did.
when uh, when I listen to music. Well, depends obviously on the time of day and the way I listen to music. I, by the way, uh, as I'm no longer a professional musician in any shape or form, I only listen to music that I
Did
like.
you play?
Yeah, I play, but I don't.
What did you play?
Well, I started off like every good Jewish boy with playing the piano, uh,
Hmm.
and I was forced to play the piano because when I was 3, I sat at the piano and I played the Strauss valses on the piano by ear, and
Hmm.
so my mother fainted immediately. My father ran out of the house and grabbed a piano teacher, came home with a whip, and if I did anything
Oh,
wrong, she would kick me and hit me. Now, I'm putting a little bit of drama into it, but more or less it was like that. But I actually started liking uh, music to play when I got rid of the piano. I'm sorry. And started
hmm.
playing things that I felt I wanted to play. And so,
Hmm.
I, being a child of the 60s, I went into the guitar and in different types of guitar.
Hmm.
I even went all the way to Spain and spent 3 months with a guitar player who allowed me to play on the wood before it became a guitar. He said that's the way that the guitar is going
Oh,
to know
wow.
that it's yours. Um,
Ah,
yeah,
interesting.
and I don't have that guitar anymore, but I still do have guitars. But music for me is no longer a pastime. Music for me is is no longer something incidental. I cannot listen to music while I'm doing something else. When I listen to music,
I can't.
you can.
No, no. I mean, sometimes I can, but I don't concentrate in the same way. And there's some music that just doesn't lend itself to, like, you can't. I don't know. Sometimes I'll put music on if I want to take a nap or if I want to calm myself. I'll play a Morton Feldman piece or something. But it depends. I don't mind music in the background, but I can go back and forth. I mean, I I once, whenever I had to write really commercial music, like to do some jingles or commercial things that I used to do, sometimes I would put on a piece of music in the background just because I hated the job so much. I decided, well, I'm going to write this while listening to something. Just
To something
go
real.
off. It's a terrible idea. I think Alan Hovhaness, the composer, said that he was incredibly prolific. He said something that he listened to music while he was writing music.
Not like John Cage, who
I don't
was
know if I
listening
believe
to
that.
silence and writing silence.
No,
This is
I don't know.
this is his great line, isn't it? No, but
Hmm.
uh, when I listen, well, first of all, I cannot relax when I listen to music. Music does not relax me. It does a lot of things to me, but
No.
it does not relax me. A lot of people, you know, tend to. This very morning, we went to visit some friends because as I always do, I left my wallet with them last night, so we had to drive all the
Hmm.
way to pick it up this morning. And
Right.
this friend of mine says, talking about something, Rossini relaxes me. On a flight, I listen to Rossini and I fall asleep. and I it doesn't matter Rossini or not Rossini. Music does not relax me. It always does something to me. I see colors. I listen to stories. And what is? Can you listen to music as a pastime? Can you listen to music incidentally? You know, as you say, like Havanas?
I think
Can you do that?
well, I think I can, although I think what it is, it's not so much listening to it as tuning it out. Like, for instance, if I'm in an elevator or in an airport or something where they're playing music, it doesn't bother me. I think I just kind of tune it out. Or sometimes I might pay attention to it. Sometimes listening to music or listening to elevator music, I'll listen and think about the orchestration. So, I'm listening at or choose to listen to it actively. But I think I can turn it off.
Well, there's one thing that I find very mind-boggling. I mean, it's terrible. Most of the restaurants, I think 95% probably of the restaurants in Israel play music.
Well, that actually, restaurants is where I really hate it.
I don't know why they do it.
I can't talk to my friends, and more often than not, the music is always so loud. And when I go to restaurants, I always ask if they can turn the music down. And there's this place that we love to go to. There's a wonderful Italian restaurant in the East Village, and I think we went there recently, and there was some private party going on, and that they felt the need to play some disco or something. I said, "Can you please turn this down?" They said, "Oh no, we have a party." So I said, "Sorry, we're not coming back." But there used to be a place in my neighborhood where I would go, and actually, the problem is they would play very soft classical music, but the problem with that was that the music was that I'd start listening to it and thinking, like they're playing the Goldberg variations, and I'm thinking, not only am I listening to it, but I'm trying to think, who's the pianist? Like I'm always trying to identify the performer. Like if they're playing the Bach cello suites, okay, which version is this? I guess that's the record reviewer side of me, Like when I hear something on the radio and it's a piece I know, I have to, and I miss who the performer is, then I have to wait till the end. Of course, online now, you can just find out that information, but still, there's always that curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll give you a good example. This morning, I came home and I fed my cat, and I just took I just wanted to lie down a little bit. I was really tired, and I have an iPhone that has an application for the radio, and where I can get radio stations from all over the world. So I put on Italian radio because I'm trying to learn Italian, and there's a classical music concert, and there's this contemporary violin concerto, and it didn't say what it was, and
drives you crazy, doesn't it?
And there were 15 minutes left into the piece, and it sounded like, I thought, oh, this is very creative. It sounds like Stravinsky. No, it's not Stravinsky. And there's this very tonal thing in the middle. What is this? But the orchestration is definitely modern because there's more percussion than Stravinsky. I was thinking, what the hell is this? And then at the end, they announce it was John Corigliano's Red Violin Concerto, which I had heard before, but it had been so many years since I heard it, and I didn't recognize it. But I thought, oh, good, I'm glad I liked the piece, So that's a good example. But you'll never hear John Corigliano in a restaurant.
No. Okay, we're going to listen to another piece, and after we listen to it, you'll tell us what we've listened to. I promise for the next time we'll be better organized, you and I, so that I know beforehand the name of the piece, because I did things a little bit kind of haphazardly.
Okay, great. Well, I look forward to doing this again. Great. So, no, definitely we'll organize.
I have some devious thoughts about creating a Jed Distler corner at U-Sophia, and we'll talk about it. I don't want to.
A corner for deviance.
Yeah, we can lead the kind of the parade. La promenade de Deviant.
Well, you have deviant like Giswaldo or somebody.
Listen, we can.
Okay, no, let's go ahead.
Listen, we can do. We can do. I would love to do it, Gesualdo. You know, let Gesualdo meet Stravinsky and see what they have to say to each other. But okay, let's listen to the piece. I'm going to mute everybody. Out of respect, the system does not want to mute you, Jed. So can you mute yourself, please?
I will mute myself.
Okay, great. Wow. Well, I know where the piece comes from, but tell us all about it.
Oh, those are the last two movements of Loose Changes, which is a two-piano piece of mine, 10 short pieces. That was played amazingly well by Alice Rybak and Susan Grace. Quattro Mani. That's on a Bridge Records release, which you can get it.
Why do they call themselves Ottomani?
Four hands.
No, Otto, Quattro or Otto?
Quattro.
Ah, Quattro. I understood Otto, and
it's
I said
Italian for four hands.
yes, no, Quattro is okay.
And those are the last two pieces. The second to last one was just a little kind of interlude, and it's very whimsical. And then the final piece is a fugue.
This piece is outstanding. I listened to it again and again and again while I was.
Thank you.
It's.
I enjoy the piece. But of course, I think these performers just bring it to such life.
Yeah, but what I like about this piece in particular is that it starts off in a very intimate but live conversation, and then all of a sudden there are no human voices anymore. Everything is divine. It's like raindrops, and the raindrops start dancing, and they have a rhythm of their own, and they chase with each other, they hide, and then they collide, and they splash all over the place. It's very beautiful.
Thank you. Oh, well, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I enjoyed writing this piece. This was something I wrote it fairly quickly. Actually, I didn't even. This is the weird thing, was that I did not write it at the piano, even though it is for two pianos. I actually wrote it away from the piano. And of course, I check it at the piano, but a lot of times, I find that, like the piano just gets in my way because I wind up doing what my hands are doing. And in fact, the second movement of this piece, I remember, it's this thing that repeats over and over again. This tune that repeats, but then the accompaniments shift around a lot. So it's like ding 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 ding. It's sort of like a Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody with the needle stuck in the groove. And that I remember very vividly. I always walk around with this tiny little moleskin book of music paper, and I was going to this a peace rally in Washington D.C. This was back in 2005. I was there with my late wife, and we took the bus back and forth from Washington to go to this big rally, and on the bus, somehow these ideas came to me, and I just, for 4 hours, I composed this whole movement. Of course, I filled it in with details. Of course, when I got home, I got back to my computer and I fleshed it out. But just the basic piece and the gestures, the timing, I'll get away from the piano. And that's what I was talking about, the physical thing of walking around the room and singing it and kind of feeling it in the air and in your body. I think that's a good way to compose, because you get rid of the start and stop thing. But then later on, at least the big picture, then you can always add to it. It's kind of like, in a way, it's like if people who are learning a piano piece, if you learn it note by note, like trying to play very complicated things note by note, and the way I often practice is sometimes, like, if I have very difficult passages, I'll outline it first, get the big picture first, and then I add it in, because that way, get the big picture and then put the details in. Of course, you always have to work on the details, but if you do the little details first, then the big picture winds up not so interesting, or kind of without a sense of breathing, I guess.
There's I think I told you I was very lucky, honored to have made a movie about Arthur Rubinstein, and with Arthur Rubinstein, and he said,
I will give anything to see that. I hope it will show up. Love of Life. I hope it shows up on DVD.
I have to find it. I know that it's archived somewhere in France. I have to find it. But anyhow, he said, when you play music, you have to forget about the notes, because otherwise you'll end up playing a lot of notes, and the clever listener will start leaving the room because there's no music. When there are only notes.
That's true. Because of the sense of the big picture, Rubinstein had that to such a degree, where the big sound and a real sense of narrative, a sense of transition, and he kept getting better and better as he got older. I think he was wonderful at all stages. I think for me, he's the point of center of all classical piano. He's like the normal center.
The mean.
He really is.
He is the mean, the big mean.
When you're tired of the eccentrics, or you're tired of the mavericks, or you're tired of the cultists, you go to Rubinstein, because he's so normal. But he's not anonymous,
Not at all. Not at all.
Never. He's never eccentric. He uses rubato, but it's always reasonable. And yet, and this is a very big yet, his sense of detail was really profound, and he knew why he played every note. There was a reason for it, and he worked. He was he always wanted to create the image that, I was happy-go-lucky and I never practiced, but There's a story, Emmanuel Axe told me this about how when, he won the first Arthur Rubinstein competition in Jerusalem in 1974. And part of the prize was to have, some coaching sessions with Rubinstein. So Manny went to Rubinstein's, I guess is the hotel, the Drake Hotel, and he brought in the Ravel Valse Nobel and Sentimental. And what Manny said was that Rubinstein had an opinion on every note and the balance in every chord. Like, he would just play two chords. He's like, oh, no, this finger, make this faster. Every little detail, he had an opinion about every detail. Almost too much, but this is how he worked. I'm thinking about Rubinstein. There's a performance of his from his Carnegie Hall series. He played 10 concerts at Carnegie Hall in 1961, where he played pretty much his whole repertoire. And I think he did this because Sviatoslav Richter did 5 Carnegie Hall concerts the year before, and I think Rubinstein got jealous, maybe. I don't know. But it's, and there's a performance of the Schumann Arabesque. It is the most beautifully proportioned singing performance. There's no eccentricity. It's not too fast, not too slow. The lines just sing out, and it's for me, I think that's that simplicity. It's simple, yet to have arrived at that simplicity, there's so much going on,
What I
And also from that series, it just came out recently. There was a box set that came out last year of the complete Arthur Rubinstein recordings, and it includes some stuff from the Carnegie Hall series that was never released because Rubinstein was a real perfectionist in the studio, and he did not want a lot of these live things to come out because they were wrong and what have you. And there's a version of the Stravinsky 3 movements from Petrushka, and Rubinstein did not ever want this to come out in his lifetime, or probably ever. And it's the only existing version of this. And Rubinstein made a lot of changes in the score, faking things and changing things, And yet it was dedicated to him, and I was dying to hear this for many years. And it's not a note-perfect performance, and I could see why he wouldn't want it out, but you really don't care. And of course, as the performance progresses, it gets better and better and more secure. But the character is just fantastic. The tempos are right on. There's nothing neurotic. It's some of the most emotionally generous music making you've ever heard. And I think, in a way, I think Maniacs kind of inherited that mantle.
Maniacs is one of the. I really I don't know why he loses himself only as somebody who plays as an accompanist, more or less. He's such a great artist, such a.
Oh yeah, and what's a crime is that he makes so few recordings.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the record industry has changed when but he made a lot of solo recordings when he was in his 20s, and they're very good. But what he's doing now, he's ripened so much. He plays so. I remember, I think it was like 2005. I was in Luzerne, and he did a recital where he played the 4 Chopin ballades. They were fantastic, but they're so completely different than how he recorded them 30 years ago. And I said, well, this should be documented, for crying out loud, because who's going to know this, I mean, Jean-Yves Thibaudet, the great French pianist, he hasn't made a solo recording in ages, and he plays the Brahms Third Piano Sonata fantastically. I mean, he's like a young Julius Katchen in that sense, but it's not documented, and, what are they doing, I don't understand it, it makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, on the other hand, it's good, like people like Marc-Andre Hamelin is constantly recording and playing, and, he's one of the great pianists of our time. He's also a good friend, so I'm prejudiced, but I think it has to do with the record labels, or maybe it's this youth thing where, Lang Lang gets a lot of attention, which is okay,
Lang Lang, a
but what
lot of
about these
attention I can live with, but Kissin, a lot of attention. I'm not going to go into gossips, but I mean, if there's one,
No, no, well,
I
no, when Lang Lang plays his best, he's really terrific. I've heard him do some really wonderful things, I'm not gonna, I know it's fashionable to put him
no, no, I'm
down,
not putting him
and
down. I think he's putting himself down because I listened to him right at the beginning. He was in the master class with Daniel Barnboim, and he
right.
was brilliant. He was brilliant. He was very,
Oh, yeah, those Beethoven
yes,
master
yes,
classes.
yes. He was very
Right,
profound.
and Barenboim is yeah. I no, I saw those. I know those, but it's interesting. Lang Lang. I just reviewed his most recent Chopin disc that Sony is bringing out, and there were some pieces where I thought that his interpretations were very vulgar, and he was really sort of beating the audience the way he often does. Yet there were certain things, like there were some Chopin etudes where he was extraordinary, where he got out of his own way. He really just did what was on the page, yet by just doing what was on the page, his own personality is coming out because he's not imposing anything. Like the butterfly etude. He plays it just as written, and then the very last chord, N, it seems like it finishes very abruptly, like all of a sudden it ends, it's abrupt, and you think, what the hell is that? He only does what Chopin writes because there's a pianissimo on that last chord. There's no pianissimo in the rest of the piece. And Lang Lang just does what Chopin writes, plays that last chord pianissimo. Now, if he played it a little louder, it wouldn't have had the same effect. Yet the rest of, but it's the attention to sometimes just by doing what the composer writes,
Yeah, sometimes the composers did have the
well,
right idea. It does happen.
I coach pianists from time to time. Young pianists. I remember there was this really talented pianist who won a competition who played a Schubert impromptu for me, and the pianist played it's dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba the first of the yeah, and she puts a fermata on the first note. Yeah, ba dum ba dum, and a lot of things like that. And I said, "Why did you do that?" And she said, "I don't know. I said, "Well, Schubert didn't write a fermata. Just try it the way it is. Do it in tempo." And then, okay, the left hand, now all the chords you're playing the same. Now, this is the eighth note, but you're playing the eighth note like a quarter note. Don't play it as fully, cut it off. And I was making her aware of these little details, and it's not that I'm being a pedant, it's just that at least start from that, because then you'll know, then it starts, when you're doing it, then it gives the score kind of diversity, Like when you start imposing all these things, that's when it starts to get a little less interesting,
I know it's always the thing that when music is so accessible today because of the
Mm-hmm.
internet and because of everything else,
Yeah.
you can understand that people that start off want to find a way to get there, want to find a way to achieve something, and most of the time they don't trust themselves, so they invent themselves while still becoming themselves. So it's very dangerous. It's very difficult. And
I feel that in music, music for me, even though it is a art that's about expression, I feel we're also in the service industry. If you're an interpreter, you're serving the composer and you're serving an audience. It's not that I'm writing music for the audience first and foremost, but I think when I say I'm it's like in the service industry, is that if somebody is paying money to come and hear me play or to hear a piece of music of mine, I want it to be in its clearest form. It doesn't mean that I have to be simple necessarily. I can be complex, but I can be ambiguous, but you can't be vague.
That's right.
And I think the vagueness comes from like not knowing the purpose. I think that like there's interpretive vagueness is when you like do a little rubato, but you don't go all the way of something. You have to own your material. You have to own the interpretation. If you're going to take a liberty, you got to own it. You got to be a Leopold Stokowski. If you're going to do something big and different, you own it. You can't do it halfway. And I feel like by serving, that's like, to make what I'm doing as clear as possible. It doesn't mean not ambiguous. The ambiguity, you can be clear in its ambiguity, but it's not being vague.
I think,
And
I
at least I try. Maybe I think I'm being vague all day today, but I do think there is that service element, of serving the composer.
I love the definition, of an artist, performing artist, defining his profession as pertaining to the service, as being part of the service industry. I think it's in my book, I read it as a very strong statement. I'm here to serve. I'll serve my way, but I'm here to serve. I'll serve my way through my ambiguity and through my way of being complex. I don't want to. This is what I read into it. I might be wrong. I don't know. I find it a statement of a pride in your profession.
I think so. I think there is that. Oscar Peterson had a great line about technique is what makes your ideas listenable. Although, I think there's some people who don't have great techniques who can express fantastic things, in spite of the technique, and you, I mean, that's a whole other topic, but I think it is, and I think having come up as a practical professional musician and having to play weddings and bar mitzvahs when I was a kid, I played piano bars, I accompanied singers, and, I worked under all kinds of crazy adverse circumstances and, having to cope with horrible pianos. And I mean, I can tell you stories about, the strangest situations. And how do you deal with that, you can't just stalk off and say, I'm an artist, I won't do this. I mean, some people can do that, but, it's like what I was saying about, in rebuilding my life, like you have to make what kind of a decision are you going to make, if your partner is dying or if you're leaving a relationship or if there's some kind of a change, what do you do? What do you make of this? If, like, you don't, how do you not be a victim to it? And I think that I just feel like I've just been so lucky in my life. I feel like right now, I think I'm just I think it's just, just like what we're doing now. I mean, just like, like being connected like this electronically is just kind of amazing. This kind of technology is so new to me. But,
yeah, because it really allows for minds to be connected, which is what is so beautiful, because voices do transmit, but the fact that you have so many people and each and every one of us is actually intimately linked to the others because we are alone in our room and everybody's in our room and we are in the room of everybody else, and it's a very one-on-one situation, which is
yeah. The difference is when you can see each other, you're a little more civil because let's say if this was a chat room or a news group, then people would start getting really nasty because they have because you can't see them. There's the anonymity, and of course,
Yeah.
if you go to any of the classical music news groups, and you Google my name, people say nasty things all the time, But, I don't dignify them with my presence. So,
Okay.
but that's what's kind of interesting.
I'm going to leave everybody with a taste of more, which is what I'm trying to do. And I'd like to thank you very much of allowing us to accompany you on this intimate journey into your mind and into your creative uh, self. We have a connection problem. I see something turning. Can you hear me, Jed?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, because you're
I hear you loud and clear, but I see these little circles going around, so maybe
right. No, I can hear you, but I think we lost your image for a second. It'll be back. So, as I was saying, thank you very much for here you are. You're back.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Daniel, and Nira, and Sylvia, and
Gilit.
there's somebody else.
Yeah,
here.
we have Gilit,
who. Gilit, I don't know if Gilit was. Well, and anyway, so anyway, I'm very curious, Sylvia and Daniel. I'd like to know more about your work, and if you can both email me some contacts or something, I'm pretty easy to find, and so anyway, thank you, Dan. I enjoyed this so much, and so let's see where this will go.
Yeah, well, we'll work on Jed Distler's corner, and we'll see what we can.
It's like Bullwinkle's Corner. Remember Rocky the Flying Squirrel? This is Bullwinkle's Corner. Today's poem is. Hey, Rocky. Hey, Bullwinkle. I'll do my Bugs Bunny imitation next time.
What we have to do is we have to try and do it with a toy piano or something.
Oh, my toy pianos are here. Well, next time I'll play toy piano.
We saw the.
We'll do an online toy piano thing. How about that?
Fantastic.
You got it.
Okay.
Okay. Take care. Have a great
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you very much.
Ciao.
And
right. So long.
my love to Maria, to Shubi, and to Pablo.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Until next time.
Ciao.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night from U-Sophia, where minds meet online.
Good night.